Okay, I would like to call this workshop for the West Dallas South Milwaukee School Board to order. Suzette, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Mrs. Carr.
Here.
Ms. Deal.
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Here.
Mr. Ustruck.
Here.
Mrs. Justums excused. Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mr. Keller.
Here.
President Lee.
Here. All right, so today we have, I believe it'll be our last workshop on the FAC committee. And so I want to turn right over to Dr. Lexman and Steve Eichman to tell us what we're talking about today.
Great, thank you. I'll do a brief introduction and then turn it over to Steve. Where we ended our last workshop on our facility master planning was really encouraging for us in terms of moving the process forward, given that where the board landed was with pretty strong consensus around there's some work we need to do with our facilities. And rather than, try to piecemeal it, let's go for something that's a little bit of a bigger, more signature kind of project. And the board really rallied around the idea of let's start at the high school and intermediate school as the place to begin what really is going to be, I think, many decades worth of work. So that really provided some direction in the development of the next step, which is the survey that goes out to the community to see if what information we share, the community also agrees with this idea. That we need to right size the number of buildings we're operating, make them last another 50 years, and then also modernize buildings so that they continue to function for us and do a better job supporting the kind of learning that we're committed to in our school district. So with that, you have a document in front of you, and Bill Foster and Steve will introduce it a little bit more. But some of you may be wondering, like, why did we just get this big 8-page thing with all these words on it, in the last 5 minutes? And we talked about that. And the reason that it's coming kind of in the moment is that there's some context setting that we think is important for everybody to hear on the board at the same time together. Because otherwise, over the weekend would have been sending email and we're trying to answer them, and you wouldn't be hearing each other's questions. So it's Bill's experience that he said, no, we introduce it all at the same time. We can build the background knowledge for the board, build some context, and then you get to hear each other ask and get questions answered. So that's why it's presented the way it is this evening. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve and then to Bill. And we also have our friends here from C.G. Schmidt and Bray in case there's other questions kind of on the kind of facility kind of construction planning side as well. But our focus really this evening is on our community-wide survey.
Thank you, Dr. Lexman. As Dr. Lexman said, you'd seen the first 4 pages of this before, and there may have been some wordsmithing and some little tweaking of it, but the last 4 pages really couldn't be written until we had the direction that we received from the board last time. And so now, once we had that meeting, we had that direction, then we all passed that information along to Mr. Foster, said here's what it is. He had some clarifying questions. We answered those for him. Based on that, what you see in front of you is, he lovingly calls it lucky number 16. This is version number 16 of the draft so far. So there is a lot of work that goes into this. But really, after he had the direction, what he'd always has said is that the last 4 pages will really write themselves once we had clear direction from the board of how we wanted to proceed. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Foster, and he'll go through the survey.
Well, great. Thanks for having me back again tonight. And again, as Steve said, really the first 4 pages were the background information that I shared with the board. I think it was on August 3rd. And then we were literally still writing till about 2 o'clock this afternoon, kind of integrating the last facts into the last 4 pages. So what I'd like to do tonight is kind of go through each page and have the board react to questions, suggestions, whatever. I'm here to handle whatever I can do. So the opening letter comes from the whole board as well as Dr. Lexman. And so it's kind of written as if, it's fairly official, and it kind of provides the background in terms of what you've been dealing with. And by the way, my job's to take what has been 2 to 3 years of work and boil it down to something that, in our audience here, we say that grandma and grandpa can read and understand. So that's what we're trying to get to. So the first paragraph talks about kind of the enrollment issues that then creates some stress on the issue in terms of the need to heat, clean, and maintain all 17 schools. Therefore, the district made it a priority to develop a plan to right-size and modernize our schools. You formed a facility advisory committee team. And then ultimately, any plan going forward must reflect the priorities of our taxpayers, and that is very true, because at the end of the day, if our taxpayers don't like it, you're not gonna have support for the referendum. So let me just pause on the opening page. Any comments on that? And again, I think you saw that, but any changes, questions, suggestions?
Anybody? Good. On to page 2.
Okay. Page 2 is easy. So page 2 is our demographic information. So when I come back, I want to look at the data in terms of to make sure the person's a resident of the district. We'll look to make sure our seniors are well represented. We're going to look at 3 subgroups. We're going to look at our staff as one group, our parents as one group, and then the most important group would be our non-parent, non-staff group because they represent the majority of our voters. We also put in one question on municipality, so we could look at in terms of breakdown from that question. The overall satisfaction questions we use in most of our community surveys, that'll provide some comparison data. And then we start to get into the background information. Again, when we write a survey, we kind of see it half as educational, half as data gathering. So this paragraph talks about really the improvement you've seen in your financial situation that has resulted in a lower tax mill rate. And that's kind of important to set the stage. So let me pause there. Any comments, questions on page 2? Okay. So page 3 is what I call the needs page. Why are you coming to ask me for this? What are your needs? So we start out, and the first one is excess capacity. So we actually worked on this chart quite a bit to show that we have been declining, and then what we're going to see is we believe kind of a slowing of the decline, but it's still going to decline. We're not going to see a big increase where all of a sudden people start having lots of babies. We don't believe that. But over the next 10 years or so, it might drop from 7,300, 7,400 down to around 7,000. The other needs that we identified are aging buildings. The average building is more than 75 years old. We have ADA compliance issues that we're concerned about, as well as this idea of outdated classrooms and support areas. Are we okay with page 3? Okay. And then page 4, again, more information that we believe is valuable: the age of the school, the capacity of each school, as well as the outstanding capital maintenance needs, which totals nearly $250 million with a B. And then we get down to really the first question of substance, which is, would you support a plan to right-size and update our schools based on 3 factors: reducing the number of schools, consolidating operations, and renovating schools? So that's kind of the modernizing piece. And there was an ad here that was, I think some people have expressed concerns, well, if we do this, are our class sizes going to go through the roof? No, they're not. We will maintain our current class size policy, so don't be concerned about that. So this is kind of what I would call your permission slip question. If you get a majority of your respondents who say, yes, go ahead and support this idea, you can proceed. If you don't, then people want to maintain all 17 schools, I guess it would be, or whatever it would be, but we need to ask the question. My experience is also putting a question here causes the respondent to go back and read the information that just was provided a little more critically. If you just have a bunch of text, you're going to page through it, but now they have to think about it and process a little bit and say, yeah, it probably does make sense, or maybe it doesn't make sense. So are we okay on page 4?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so now we get into kind of what's new for tonight, right sizing, what is being proposed. So I think the FACT came back and said there's a couple things. One had to do with maintaining grade configuration, that was important, and also beginning to reduce the schools, elementary 11 to 8, intermediates 3 to 2, high schools 3 to 2, and no change at the charter school level. And then the plan would also update the remaining 12 schools, which will extend their service lives another 30 to 50 years. So that's the plan. We're not probably going to be able to do that all in the first phase, but that's our plan. Make it easier to maintain class sizes and efficiently staff our schools. The idea there is that you don't have small class sizes around, but because you got to keep the school open, you have to do it. So it's actually a money savings. eliminate the need to fund maintenance in buildings being closed. So based on what we know today, which is closing one high school, one intermediate, and then we took the average of 3 elementaries, we came up with more than 87 million that we would save. We'd also result in a net savings of approximately $500,000 each year by having 5 fewer buildings to heat, clean, and operate. And by the way, I think that's very, very conservative based on my experience. A lot of times we'll see a savings of, or other districts will see $200, $300, $400 or $100,000 per school. So I know this is the net savings, but I think it's very conservative. And allow us to increase educational and co-curricular opportunities such as arts, athletics, and et cetera. Given the cost to update the remaining 12 schools, it's not realistic to implement the entire plan at one time. Therefore, the plan would be done in phases. Phase 1 would be finished as early as 2026. So at a high level, we try to provide a little chart here that would show what would be done in phase 1 and what would be done in future phases. So let me pause there and ask questions. Yes, sir.
So we discuss about Central here specifically, about stuff we might do with it. Something I don't see mentioned here is possible sale of district property. Is that something that is mentioned elsewhere?
It is not, and we talked about that. And we thought that right now we don't know that for sure.
Sure.
It's possible, but there's other things that are possible. So we thought we might be better served not getting too far ahead of ourselves unless you think it might be helpful.
Well, I just don't know, for some people to see that it's being considered as an option may make a difference in how they respond to this survey, as another means to raise funds towards what we're trying to do. So I'm not saying it has to be a separate line, or even just like a note where you put that, you know, the class sizes weren't gonna be, you know, affected by this decision. A note, I don't know, underneath the bolded part before the table or something that said that, you know, just any district properties that will be idled or consolidated may be considered to be sold at a later date, or something to that effect. So that it's not being looked at like we're gonna close buildings, but hang on to them for sure, even though we understand that that is a distinct possibility, or parts of them are a distinct possibility that we may continue to have. But I know that there will be a subsection of our community who will want to see, like, well, would you consider selling them if, you know, it made sense to do so? So I don't know how other board members feel about that, but I just think that, for me personally, having that as an option in there with the understanding that there's no decisions have been made, obviously, because this is all about trying to figure out what the options could possibly be.
I guess the question I would have is, I noticed that we do have under intermediate schools, we've already made the decision to seek to sell Lane Intermediate, so that might be a bit confusing, because we're saying we don't know what buildings we want to sell, but now we're pretty much saying here that we would seek to sell that one?
The difference is we have not yet identified the elementaries to close, so we're not that far in the process yet to sell them.
I'm more talking about Central.
Okay.
Of all the buildings that we have, the tracts of land that we have, the most valuable of which is probably Central. And so if people are thinking, well, if we're gonna consolidate into one high school, why do we need to keep Central? Like, why aren't we selling that piece of property? And there might be very good reasons not to do that, or to keep part of it, or whatever we end up doing with it. But the thing is that, and I didn't notice that, Amy, so thank you for pointing that out, that we're saying we're gonna sell Lane. Like, the plan is to not keep Lane for anything and then sell it. Okay, well, what about Central? Why isn't that listed there? Does that mean they're not planning on selling Central? That's where I would go with my mind thought process.
Well, right now, we have it modify the Central High School building site for district and community uses, or we could say, and/or explore the sale of the property.
Yeah, that's fine. Something along the lines of that,
Okay?
because then
Yeah.
people understand that we're
If-
thinking about all of this.
Yep.
Yeah, we went back and forth on it, so I think it makes sense to include it.
So it would really be an or and/or?
Could be and/or, because we could say, we want to keep this part of the building for community district use, and the other part we're gonna sell for some other use that they're gonna do. Maybe that's the situation we get into when we get that far down the road.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this page?
I guess we're good?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are easy tonight.
Heather I did get an email, she said she was gonna try to log in, so I don't, if, Brandon, if you see Heather on Zoom who wants to chime in with something, I don't know if she's there yet or not,
She's not
but,
on
okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't leave her out if she was in Zoom. If you see her come in Zoom, can you just let me know, so I can make sure, try to check, see if she has something to say. All right, sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so now we're up to the phase one, project one. So what we did based on the board's decisions from the last meeting, we decided we wanted to position the high school as being the first project. And we said because of its size, the current Nathan Hale's school site was chosen to create the comprehensive high school. So the project would add, we've got a 2-story classrooms, wings and labs, secure entrances with office, band, choir, orchestra, and auditorium, gym with locker rooms, swimming pool, career and technical ed, or what Grandma and Grandpa call shop, a kitchen, cafeteria, and library. So those are new additions or new parts of the building. The project would renovate classrooms and labs in 8, gym, fitness, and locker rooms in 9, and the parent pickup drop-off configuration and add parking. So I'm just kind of amazed that, it's a very comprehensive, really complicated plan, but at a high level, this is what you're gonna do, I think. The project would also update major building systems, including plumbing, HVAC, and electrical, and new tennis courts are included in the cost estimate, but the location is yet to be determined. So that came in at $180.2 million. Let me pause right there. Is that the plan? That's the plan, okay?
The first part of it.
Yeah, I have a question on still, I think we've talked about this too, but the current Nathan Hale site, so we're so close to this, we know exactly that means Nathan Hale closes and we get a new high school, but I think somebody reading this for the first time is still gonna go, oh, they're getting rid of Central and keeping Hale. And that's not what we wanna communicate.
Right.
So I don't know how to express
To be named
that
later.
distinction.
School to be named.
The comprehensive high school, parentheses, to be named.
Current.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would say
can
to
we-
create a new comprehensive high school, which would be named at a future date. Or which
At
would
the
be named
116th
later.
and
So you got
Lincoln
most of the sentence
site.
there, just kind
Oh,
of,
I like that, actually. The 116th and Lincoln site, because it's not gonna be Hill, we have to change
Oh.
that vernacular.
But that helps people know where it is. So I can put in the address, I'll say because of its age, the current Nathan Hale site located at,
I think we want to get rid
Oh,
of
you
Nathan.
wanna
Yeah,
get
just
rid
give
of
it to
Get rid of
Nathan
Nathan
Hale. Yeah.
Because.
You say the current school located at 116th and Lincoln.
current school.
11633.
All right.
So then just putting in the word new was chosen to create the new comprehensive high school.
Okay,
I think that is a very valid point that Dr. Lexman said.
Mhm.
We don't want the perception to be that we're closing Central and keeping Hale.
Right.
That's not what we're doing.
Yeah, it'll look like a brand new school if this goes through.
It sure will.
Just
Yeah,
happens
it
to be
really
the
will.
site of one of our old ones.
It's just the place where we have the most space, is what it boils down to.
Exactly.
You can see we even took the names and the end zones out to try to make that as obvious as we can.
Mhm.
Soccer field is showing now too.
I see that, yeah.
okay, any other changes there?
Maybe we could include in that thinking that the project would add a tribute to Nathan Hale and West Dallas Central
In West Milwaukee, right?
and West Milwaukee, some type of Hall of Fame or.
Feels a little detailed.
But you would be
support
adding
that.
that in the list of things that you're adding.
Oh,
That's
so
what I'm
add
saying.
Oh.
like number 8?
Like a number 8.
Oh, like a historical, yeah, ooh, I like that, like, yeah.
I know we don't want to get too crazy, and I don't want to.
Yeah.
I think in that list, it would fit, if we're taking out Nathan Hale and driving home the fact that we're not closing one for the other, that.
What would you, that's gonna be an area, that's a, Matt, what do you call those things? Kind of a
Historical
Hall of
museum.
Yeah, I imagine maybe in the event lobby or something, we could have a little tribute to historical installation from our two prior high schools. That would absolutely be,
So he's calling it an installation,
yeah, we have to,
like a,
we have to grandma and grandpa-fy that description to make it clear as to exactly what we're intending. But
Yeah.
if the board feels that that historical
Necessary.
piece is critical, I mean, the prior page says yet to be named. We can repeat yet to be named and then add language as we just talked about here. We can surely add another point
People
to
that
drive
you-
that home.
Hang out with, would it be important to them people to know that the
Wow.
sports club?
I'm thinking about
I'm
that.
asking, you know, honestly. The old
I would think so, because
alumni.
both schools have that now.
Right. You know, I mean, do you feel that that would be important?
for us to add it into this.
To the athletes.
Is it like a trophy and awards?
Yeah, do we make a statement that the histories of both Hale and Central will be memorialized in the new
Yeah.
event lobby or
Right.
something to that effect?
And West Milwaukee.
And West
West
Milwaukee,
Milwaukee.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and it does go beyond athletes, like, I mean, we
Right.
would take pictures of the murals from
Everything.
the other sites,
Yeah.
and, you know, it would be kind of a museum,
Mhm.
which I think is just a lovely idea.
Although to keep with our context, do we really want to be putting the name in there, or do we just want to say that, you know, our former high schools will have
Yeah.
their things memorialized in the event lobby? So we're continuing to keep the name out.
That's a good idea. Our former three high schools.
I
Former?
think 3 will be confusing because West Milwaukee was a while ago, if we say the number 3.
Yeah,
Just say
my
five.
sense is folks in West Milwaukee will get it right away. But there's still hard feelings, even this far out from closing that high school.
I would just say former. I think just saying former high schools in the district.
Former high schools, yeah.
And that will encompass all of them, and we'll just make sure if we get to that point that it does. I just have to ask here, because I didn't ask this question we were talking about before, the HVAC, that this will be a fully air-conditioned building? Okay.
Correct.
There's
That's-
a lot of that going on in there.
Would that be the same for West Milwaukee?
Other than the pool. Not
Well,
that you were
other than-
expecting the pool to be air conditioned,
No,
yeah,
yeah.
just for clarity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense. Will West Milwaukee also, with the renovations, also include making sure that is a fully air-conditioned building?
Yes.
Good.
Super technical, we may not do some of the shops because of the return air and you're pumping cold air and then sucking it right back
Understood.
out.
The
But
majority
the
of
vast majority.
classrooms,
Your event
hallways,
spaces, your
offices.
classrooms will be, absolutely.
Excellent. Other questions on this page or
On this
comments?
page or just the top?
This page, the whole page.
All right,
Well, now that
because
get
we
to the
hadn't got
most
down to the
important
bottom part.
question.
Right.
So we said, and you need to be comfortable with this, the Board of Education believes now is a good time for the community to consider a referendum because of the district's financial health and interest rates remain near historic lows. Would you support a $180.2 million referendum that provides funding for the high school project as described above? This would represent an estimated tax increase of $150 for each $100,000 of property value for each of the next 25 years.
Ooh, it was 20 last
Yep.
time.
Yep, and also the number was higher last time. So we
Oh, okay.
restructured our debt in a phased approach in order to see what it did with our tax impact. So, good catch, Jane, yes. So this was, the previous number we looked at was, it was higher than 150, I forget what it was, and it was over 20 years. So this new calculation is over 25 years. It's a phased, we take out debt in a phased approach, and then the debt remains on our books for longer.
Mhm.
So is the main reason for doing that just to reduce the tax impact?
Yep. And again, because we don't have any referendum debt on our books, Fund 39 debt on our books. So once you have that, it's easy, much easier to restructure and maintain a mill rate of, you have ability to maintain a mill rate based on the restructuring of your debt at whenever, whatever years that you're looking at. Without that, you're left to the revenue limit formula that translates down to your mill rate. So that's why we've seen our declining mill rate. And if we had Fund 39 debt, we could have levied additional, which would have kept our mill rate steady, and then we'd see a cliff. So once we add debt on, you can you know, it's up to the board, however you want to structure that debt to either create that cliff or let it drop naturally. But this helps us get that Fund 39 debt on our books to begin with. So that was the intention of expanding it over the 25 years.
Questions about the question?
With the 150 for each 100,000, why do we structure it that way rather than just looking at the average cost, the average value of a home in West Dallas and say the average taxpayer will
Yeah, that-
increase by this amount?
So we've tried it that way. The problem is there's still a fairly large continuum of home values. And this way, if you know your house is 100,000, 150, 200, 250, 300, you can do the math easy. But if you come out and say the average is 149,000,
Oh, sure.
everybody who's not there creates confusion. So we found this to be the clearest. It also then correlates with this mill rate presentation. So this is really a reflection of how it applies to mill rate. Not everybody gets that, but I think it's the most defendable.
And on a similar note, I do have the median number, this is not our average, but this is our median school district home value, is $148,400. So roughly $150,000 is our median home value in our school district. And just a comparison of the tax impact with the debt over 20 years, we were at $187 for each $100,000 of property value. So expanding over to 25 years, we're looking at the $150 for each $100,000 of property value.
Questions, comments? Everyone understands? Everyone's okay? Brendan?
Yeah, I'm okay. I just, I liked Bill's idea 2 weeks ago about talking on the daily value rather than the bigger. And I was just wondering how that would fit in, but I don't see how it would work with the way the question's structured.
Sometimes what we'll do is we'll put $150 or whatever it would be, $12 per month. We typically don't go down to the day because people feel like you're trying to sell me now. I don't like that. But I think some people do budget by the month, so I can add a monthly breakdown.
I think monthly breakdown makes sense. I
So
agree.
that-
Most people do
Go ahead,
paid
Jim.
monthly,
Right, my rent's paid monthly or
and so then they do their billing by that.
So on the day, it's about 62 cents. So if I multiply that by 30 days, $18.60 a month.
Less than $20. Granted, it's not including West Milwaukee, so.
And that's on $100,000. So if, say, your home is $200,000, you double that. If your home is $300,000, you triple that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else there?
We good?
Good. All right, now we're to Phase 1, Project 2 would renovate and expand West Milwaukee Intermediate School to right-size the district. West Milwaukee Intermediate would need to be expanded and updated. Same format, the project would add a 2-story structure providing space for band choir orchestra, gym and locker rooms, career and tech ed, and secure entry with office. And then the project would renovate a 2-story classroom wing and labs, library and classrooms, art and classrooms, parking, and parent pickup drop-off configuration to improve traffic flow and student safety. This project would also update major building systems, including plumbing, HVAC, and electrical. This came in at a bargain price of $49.1 million.
Yeah, that's lower. I thought it was over 50 last time we looked at this.
This was the number from last time.
It was 49.1?
Mhm.
So what we're doing now is we're combining these, and this is, I don't know if it's subtle, but really you can't say, I want to do the intermediate ahead of the high school. We're, in essence, saying this would be the second project if people would want to do it, bringing the grand total to $229.3 million. Would you support a $229.3 million referendum that provides funding for Project 1 and Project 2? And this tax impact actually, now that it's been amortized over 25 years versus 20, came down to just under $200, which I guess in my experience is kind of an important psychological threshold. I'm not saying it's gonna have support, but I think it's a lot better being less than 200 than more than 200, so that was encouraging. And if there's support here, then, you know, I guess we haven't talked about it, but there is a scenario where you might have 2 questions on the ballot, or 1, depending on how the data comes back. We can build that bridge when we get to it, but, or you could go for the whole enchilada if there's strong support in the survey. So that is really it. The last page is the mailing panel. By the way, when this gets printed, it'll be a little booklet. It gets mailed flat, so people either see the opening letter, turn it over, they'll see the mailing panel. And we are gonna be providing, once we figure out exactly what the dates are, a community information session. And, so this will be promoted. So, we'll, you know, arbitrarily, if this was gonna land on, and be open on October 15th, maybe October 20th or 25th or something, there would be this informational session that the survey would be promoting, as well as other communications can promote it.
Sorry, if we could just go back to the West Milwaukee page, I'm wondering if we could add something indicating that the Liberace Theater will not be changed, because that was actually something brought up during the FAC committee. It was a big thing for a couple of our community members, that people realized that we're not gonna do anything to we're not gonna get rid of the Liberace Theater. It will still be there, and that will be the,
Is it gonna be renovated or maintained as?
Hopefully get some, you know, infrastructure upgrades.
Yep,
to make the theater more-
building system improvements are planned for that space, so if we just acknowledge that the Liberace Theater will remain.
yeah, because it was just, I just
And
remember
receive
a couple
building
peop-
system improvements or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because that was something that people specifically said, especially, and that was very important to them. So I think especially for our West Milwaukee community, I think it would be good for them to see that we're not planning on doing any more than upgrading it or making it better.
Good point.
Yeah, so not renovating per se, because the
Well,
seats and all
yeah.
that stuff is gonna stay the same, but we're gonna better HVAC, electrical, you know, maybe
Yeah.
sprinklers in there, that sort of thing.
Correct.
Did you call it building system improvements?
Yeah, we'll use the same language as the section directly above it.
Okay, that'll be a note, much like tennis courts were a note.
Correct.
Got it.
Mhm.
Yep.
All right. And that is your survey.
I have a question for our team on, related to the kind of pre-communication kind of rollout for a school district with multiple municipalities that it touches. Do districts in this kind of situation, do I go around, like with Steve and Caitlin, do we host like for all the municipal leaders, all of the school district leaders, get them in a room together, here's what we're about to do, you guys need to be aware of this? Or do I go individually to every municipality and host something? You know, what's the strategy to begin that process?
Yeah, I think any of those would be beneficial, whatever's probably most efficient for you, and sometimes if there's tension amongst your municipalities, maybe you do them separate. If they tend to play well together, giving them all the same message at the same time might be an effective way to do it. I think as Bill had mentioned at the last meeting, because of the nature of a right-sizing plan, the staff being up to speed is equally as critical as our municipal entities and others. And I know you guys have begun that process,
Yes.
and that will continue. So anything we can do with targeted groups of influential community leaders, business leaders, et cetera, getting this in front of them and what your plan is before the survey lands, I think is helpful.
It really does help, and, you know, if they're influential, as Matt said, or thought leaders in the community, and they hear it and they go, this makes sense, that really helps, as opposed to, you know, that's a better reaction than this is a lot of money.
Mhm.
So it really does pay to go out and talk to people.
Okay. So start getting that
Add that to the
piece
calendar?
put together.
Would it be helpful to also try to hit the senior living community? Because there's a whole lot of voters that live there. And I understand that they're not paying property taxes per se, but it's probably reflected in their fees
Yeah.
that they're paying. But, I mean, each one of those people is gonna be able to vote. And there's a lot of people live in those senior living communities. There's 3 or 4 large ones in the city. There's also one in West Milwaukee, I believe, and New Berlin. Well, there's a apartment complex in New Berlin that would be within our district. So I don't know if that would also, be something that you have to work through the building. They have some rules on that. You might have to get an invite from an actual resident in order to be able to go in there. But since this is getting emailed to them and they are less likely to be able to travel to a community event on their own. So I don't know, it's just something I want to throw out there because it's a strategy I use when I'm running for election, is because I know those people vote every time religiously. And so it's something that, it'll be a big chunk of the people voting on this most likely. And if they have no clue what it's about, who knows what they'll end up doing.
It'd be probably good to have conversations with other people out in the community as well.
Sure. Yeah, we've traditionally done that more once a referendum is proposed versus prior to a survey. And it's a fine line between looking like we're attempting to, even if we're just disseminating information,
Right.
whether we're attempting to influence the survey results. If we just have a big data set that's super influenced by us gently nudging and educating, that probably isn't gonna be the best data set. My opinion, Bill's never said this, I think one of the reasons this works is because if we get somebody to read 8 pages and they're in or out, that's about as much time we're ever gonna get with a typical voter anyway. So I personally think that's part of the reason the data is so valid. During an actual referendum conversation, when we're doing the robust informational campaign, absolutely. If we get in there, if we can present during lunch, we're in. They'll be there, they're attentive, right, they're available. So it's a very common strategy to use, and it's not about influencing, it's just about educating.
Information, yeah.
And again, I think you can do as much as you want during this, let's say, 4-week time frame as the survey's getting printed and rolled out. But at the same time, I think we do have to be a little careful that we don't look like we're out there advocating to
No, that's
sway
understandable.
data.
And that'd be fine. It might be better if we get from this initial portion of it, because they're all gonna get this book too, I mean, as residents. So I think, as long as, it's not, I don't know what this is, no, and then that's the information we're getting back is no. But if more information came forward, then maybe they would have been more apt to support it with the understanding of it, so. But I will defer to the experts on this as far as what we should and shouldn't do. But I just want to make sure we keep that in our mind. Obviously, the municipalities, we want our other elected officials to be aware of this and being able to answer questions about it if their constituents come up to them and ask them what they think about it. So I think that's definitely something we want to do.
Well, we meet every Wednesday, so we'll pivot from just finalizing survey, hopefully, assuming the board is liking the direction. We'll pivot to that communication conversation starting this Wednesday, I have a feeling. So thanks for all your thoughts on that. That's really helpful.
Churches might be another thing. Jeff?
Several times it was mentioned, we need to make this statement more grandma and grandpa friendly. Would it be of any use or behoove us to have a question under, do you have children attending? Do you have grandchildren attending the district?
Yeah, it's
Or no?
funny. And if we don't put it, grandparents will rate their own question, pick a box, and then check yes.
Of course they do.
So,
That's cute.
so sometimes we use a question having to do with other relationships you have with, you're a past graduate yourself, you're alumni, you have children or grandchildren, children who have graduated or a grandparent. So I can add that if I have room.
Yeah.
It's gonna be tight, actually.
Well, you don't have to, I was just wondering.
No, it's kind of we sometimes do, sometimes don't. It certainly doesn't hurt, other than if I can't fit it, then it hurts. I'll do my best about that.
Other questions or comments?
I just want to say, I think you did a fantastic job. I mean, from the minute we kind of started this, who knows how many years ago. I think Dr. Lexman, you learned a lot from the borders and doing that, and getting to this point when we did the referendum, we asked early on for the building maintenance referendum, and now to this. I mean, it really is amazing to see how thoughtful, how much work has been put into this. And I just want to convey that message to everybody that watches and that's a part of this, that this was really just an amazing thing to kind of watch happen. And being born and raised here, and being a Hale guy and the Hale Central stuff, and, you know, that may not seem like a big deal, but that is a big deal in this community, and I love how we're treating that, and we're gonna respect that, and West Milwaukee as well, and, I really think you did a fantastic job leading, and you guys just really nice job. And it was really fun to watch and to be a part of, and I really hope we get the support.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yes, we're all gonna work hard to get the support.
Any other comments or questions? We're okay, we're good with this, we're good with this survey with those minor changes that we implemented? Because then we'll be approving that Monday, right? Or next month, not this Monday, the
13th.
13th. right.
Yep.
So, we'll plug all the final dates then based on an assumed approval at the 13th, it goes to print right after.
Okay.
Right, so now we can start to plug
Yeah,
those
now we
other
can
dates
plug
in.
in and figure out
Is-
exactly.
Is there a need, would it be better if we approved it sooner? That's a question I'm asking.
Well, yes. You know, that would, then we could kind of get the wheels rolling in terms of securing the printer, making sure that they're, you know, we get into the print queue, and it would probably move things up a bit. Well, it would move things up.
Having a block of time post-survey results and pre-having to make a decision isn't gonna hurt. 'Cause
Right.
sometimes the data is not perfectly clear. If it's perfectly clear, great, one way or another, you know. If it's a little bit muddy in the middle, we might want an extra week or two to work together on what a compromise position might be, so.
So the question then comes of, if the board is available, and is there any sort of issue with community perspective of if we're rushing to approve the survey? It's the only thing I'm thinking of. It's a survey.
Yeah, sure, I think there's always that risk of a perception, and we know that, you know, eyes are on school boards these days, right? Not just ours, but all over the place. And so that could create that perception that, you know, why did you sneak this in on a special meeting to get it approved? You know, we're trying to get another workshop organized right now for this Thursday. It could be added there, but I think it runs that risk again of, you know, us sneaking it in. Next Monday's Labor Day, so that's,
Right.
it's time for us to take a Monday off.
What does the board think? I mean, if we did it, because I know we were looking at Thursday, this coming Thursday now for the workshop, was a workshop supposed to only be? What do you guys think about if we added an action item, which would be to approve this survey that we're having right now, so that we have that extra time? Essentially, an extra week it would buy us, a little more than that, to be able to,
I mean, as long as we have 24-hour notice.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah, I don't see why-
see a concern like sneaking it in. I think this is
Okay.
this is
I mean,
it's a
some
survey.
information that we want to get, you know, this is.
Do you want to open that meeting, sorry, no, do you want to open that meeting for public comment as well?
it's just a survey.
Right. If it goes on September 13th, it would be a meeting with public comment.
Right, it's true. So I think that if we did do that, we probably should, in case people wanted to come and say whatever they wanted to say about the survey. Does that change anyone's opinion about doing it on that Thursday? The second, so this coming Thursday, in 2 days, 3 days.
It's fine for me.
Can I get a thumbs up, thumbs down if we want to put the survey for approval on the Thursday with public comments at the beginning? And then would we just do that right away as an action item after public comments and then go into the workshop so that we can get that
yeah.
done with?
I mean, we can organize it that way, and, yeah, and maybe even in, I think what's interesting about, maybe this is not unwise, because at the same time, we're gonna be presenting a plan that will save at least $500,000 a year. The final numbers will be more, and approve a survey to go out to the community to ask for support. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic in terms of messaging.
Yep.
And does anyone have any comments or questions or concerns about doing that? I don't hear any, so if you guys, if that's amenable, that we can do that, we can notice it properly, and we'll make sure that that's noted that there will be public comments allowed, hopefully pertaining to the survey, but who knows what we'll end up getting. And then we'll move and action that right away so that you guys can get moving on it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and I think what, so Amanda, this is a thought out loud for you. We probably should do some communicating even starting tomorrow. Get this out on social, that there's a, you know, a unique meeting,
In the
with
reasoning, yeah.
Right, with this, the board is gonna consider approving a survey, to make it some eyes on it, and the more eyes is not a bad thing, even if it's gonna be at first the people that are concerned about it.
Sure.
And it gets people talking, and gets it out on social media, so.
We can dispel the myths and rumors earlier if it gets out earlier.
Okay.
Okay, well, that is all I had. Is there any other comments, questions that the board has? Otherwise, I think you guys have closing remarks, I guess. Anything else?
I have a question.
Brendan, yes.
For the respondent information for that, do you have children? Can we just put, do you have relatives attending a district school? And then you could put in your children, grandchildren, and then other, in case
Oh,
there's.
Smart. Let me try that. I was just adding that, so I might get that idea. All right.
And that covers your nieces and nephews
Nieces, nephews, yep.
as well.
The only thing that it'll create a problem, what we like to do is we want to create subgroups, and I'm not sure I can, if I've got a one-to-many relationship, I could do that. I'll come up with it's a good suggestion. I'll see if I can make that work.
Sure, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Brendan, anything else?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm all right.
All right.
No, I think, that's it. I appreciate the feedback. Had we known it would be this efficient, we maybe would have had Thursday's workshop
Yeah.
tonight. I was a little concerned about introducing two great big things in the
Oh.
same evening, but now it actually times itself out in a different way, so who knows how these things work out at times. But hopefully for us, it's working out in the right way. So, yeah, again, thank you, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Via Zoom, correct? We're doing Zoom,
In person if you can.
in person if you can?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It'll have a
Good.
Zoom option.
I thought that was,
Yeah, I'll be here in person,
Okay.
yeah. Do we have to have a motion? We need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Moving second, any last minute discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? We are adjourned.